Good morning, my brothers and sisters, and all my friends from all over the world. This morning, we are going to talk about the mystery of disappearance of the Madhu Vidya from India. And it disappeared more than about 15,000 years back if we follow the modern calendars, and if we see the corresponding dates of Treta Yuga. Treta Yuga was the second era of Hindu calendar after Satyuga. We believe the Satyuga was the age of truth, and truth was prevailing everywhere in the time of Vedic Sanskriti and the Vedic civilization, where we used to practice in this holy land the wisdom tradition of ancient India, always proclaimed about Satyat Nasti Pro Dharma. There is no religion greater than truth. And all the rishis and all the learned pandits of Vedic times, they all used to emphasize on the dharma of truth. And dharma of the truth must be the foundation of the human psyche and the human character. If we don't have the foundation of the truth of our character, believe me, doesn't matter how much high education we go for, and doesn't matter how many books we read and how many holy books we follow, and every word of God turns into empty talk, self-possessive idealism, which creates judgmental mind and the duality all around us, where we just always get imprisoned into this me and them. We never reach to the state of we and ourselves. As it says in the rustic wisdom of rural India, Gaon Rame, the village is the God. The real meaning of this proclamation, this wisdom saying, is that the universal unity, the universal cooperation, which is the message, the core message of Madhu Vidya. This universal unity is based on universal trust in each other and the universal benevolence and the universal welfare, which is generated out of cooperative and collective effort of everybody in the village. The universal cooperation. And when the whole village is existing in the attitude of universal cooperation and the universal empathy and universal goodwill, God exists there. Thus, the whole definition of the law of emergence, which later on science rediscovered as the law of emergence. And as I said before, I paid my respects to Alfred Nobel Whitehead, who gave this theory of progressive emergence of divine characters, the novel characters, through the unity. When there is a unity and harmony of the atoms, the new metamaterials are born. This is the core message of Madhu Vidya. And as we discussed yesterday and talked about why Brahm Vidya turns into a curse, the Brahm Vidya, which is the wisdom of heavens, symbolized by the river Ganges, coming out of the head of Lord Shiva, the greatest yogi, the river of wisdom, the heavenly wisdom. And this Brahm Vidya, which is supposed to be the tool of salvation of the whole humanity, which is supposed to be the instrument of creating heaven on earth, for one and all, not exclusive for some people, and not to practice the exclusive righteousness, but to practice the all-inclusive righteousness of the universal empathy. That is the foundation. And that is the Bodhisattva vow, not to worry about own nirvana and work for the nirvana of all the other sentient beings. So he puts his own nirvana on the hold, suspends his own nirvana, and that's Bodhisattva attitude. And that is what it means by universal empathy and universal love and compassion. And if the Brahm Vidya doesn't get transformed, doesn't get applied into Madhu Vidya, the universal cooperation, and how Madhu Vidya is created, how Madhu Vidya is generated and followed by everybody. As it says so beautifully in the Holy Bible, the God said, after making the man in his own image, the image of the God, that is what we are. And after making the man in his own image, God said to him, go and multiply. This is exactly what the slogan must be of the Madhu Vidya and Brahm Vidya. Once we have realized, and we have known ourselves, that's the slogan of know thyself of the Brahm Vidya. So once we have seen and once we have realized the image of God and its power and potential, the infinite power and potential of this image of God within, then we are supposed to, then we are required, then we must share this information with others, with everybody of the human family. This is the code of conduct, and this is the greatest duty of every Brahma Yogi, to share this information, to share this image of God with everybody, with everyone, to perform the divination yagya of everyone. And this is known as multiplication of the image of God. Not having the kids, not the genetic multiplication I'm talking about, but, and that is what not the God meant when he said, go and multiply. This was the message and this was the command of the Lord God. After he made the man in his own image and said, go and multiply. So we are supposed to, the Brahma Yogi is supposed to share that information, the holy wisdom, the wisdom of heavens, with everyone. So multiply the image of God. And this is very important part, and this is the first step towards Madhu Vidya, towards the application of to the application of the Brahm Vidya into Madhu Vidya. We have to take this first step to diffuse the knowledge, the diffusion of the knowledge, dissemination of this great divine knowledge, the heavenly wisdom of Brahma Vidya. And if we don't distribute, if we don't seed the brains of everybody around, then the Brahma Vidya becomes a curse on ourselves. And we will have this disease of wisdom arrogance, jnana ahamkara, which is the greatest disease of the human mind, this pride. And we will be condemned for the self-destruction. That is suicidal. As we know, the law of polarity tells us that on one end of the polarity there is Amrita, the elixir of immortality. That is what we got in the churning of the ocean. And churning of the ocean is the symbol of Brahm Vidya, know thyself. So on one polarity we got the elixir of immortality, Amrita. And on the other end, we got the greatest poison, halahal, the poison which can burn the whole universe, which can burn the whole earth. And that is what I mean. That is the wisdom arrogance. That is the jnana ahamkara. That is the poison. So on one end we have Amrita of Brahm Vidya, polarity. And the other polarity we have this poison. So we have to be very careful. We have to walk on the edge of the sword. But when we walk on the edge of the sword with the attitude of universal welfare, this same edge of the sword becomes bed of roses, the bed of flowers. So we have to diffuse the Brahm Vidya, the heavenly wisdom, and we have to seed the brains of the other people. My dear brothers and sisters, that is what it all meant by Ashawamegh Yagya. The great exercise of Ashawamegh Yagya of the wisdom tradition of ancient India was meant to diffuse the Brahm Vidya and seed the brains of all the humanity all over the planet. So the Ashawamegh Yagya was not the exercise of imperialism and colonization of the earth. Let me remind all those great Western scholars and academicians who implanted wrong informations and wrong interpretations of wisdom tradition of India, of Ashawamegh Yagya. It was not only the horse sacrifice, but it was beyond. And it was the exercise of seeding the brains of all the humanity with the Brahm Vidya, the heavenly wisdom, and prepare them for Madhu Vidya, for the universal cooperation, for the universal welfare and the universal goodwill and universal benevolence and universal empathy, the great Vaishnava Bhav. So till 8th incarnation of Lord Vishnu, all our campaigns of Ashawamegh Yagya, the diffusion of the knowledge, as it is, I want to say about monarch butterfly. The monarch butterfly starts in the North America continent and travels for thousands of kilometers down to the South American continent. Can you imagine one insect performing the great act of Ashawamegh Yagya and seeding the flowers, pollinating the flowers all over earth on that part of the world, over the continents, intercontinental flight of monarch butterfly. This was exactly what Ashawamegh Yagya was. But till the 8th incarnation, the great army of the king used to follow the great pandits, the great wisdom yogis of Brahm Vidya, who used to diffuse the knowledge of Brahm Vidya, and through the satsang with the different lanes and different people in the foreign lands. But if the king of that area, that locality, that territory will resist without any reason, then the power of the army was used to subdue them and put a representative of Sanatan Dharma, of the wisdom tradition of India, to keep the tradition on of the Brahm Vidya diffusion. My dear brothers and sisters, this diffusion of knowledge of Brahm Vidya was checked by certain groups, by certain interests. And that was the greatest cause of disappearance of Madhu Vidya from India. Because when there is no diffusion of the knowledge, all the brains, human brains, become like what the farmers call that fallow ground. And in the fallow ground, all the bushes, all the thorny plants, and all the wild animals proliferate, and it becomes a jungle. This is exactly what happens to the human brain. If you don't seed the human brain with the divine characters, and if you are so fortunate to have the seeds of Brahm Vidya for your mind, and that is the job of every parent, and that is the job of every guru, and that is the job of every teacher, and of the society and the community of humanity, the humankind. To seed the brains of every member of the human family with the Brahm Vidya divine attributes. The divine attributes I call the attributes which have the greatest circle of compassion, like universal empathy and love and compassion and justice and equality of genders, like Ardhanarishwar Swarupa of Lord Shiva. So this diffusion was checked. When this diffusion of knowledge and Brahm Vidya was checked all over the land of Bharatvarsha, people became illiterate. Their brains became like jungles. And we lost the great knowledge of Madhu Vidya, which is based on the universal cooperation, which is based on the universal goodwill. And if the Brahma Yogi uses the Brahma Vidya for self-glory, he is condemned to be transformed into Brahma Rakshasa. Can you imagine the curse that you are at the high pedestal of a Brahma Yogi, the heavenly divine being, the universal being, and then you fall down, you become a bottomless pit, and you represent hell on earth as a Brahma Rakshasa. What a curse. Let me tell you how Buddhism, how the message of Buddha traveled all around the planet. It traveled through non-violent Ashawamegh Yagya. That was the first experiment of Lord Buddha, using ahimsa paramo dharma. The non-violence is the greatest religion. And through the message of ahimsa and non-violence, Lord Buddha performed a new kind of Ashawamegh Yagya. The Ashawamegh Yagya without the army of the king, but with the army of Sangham, the army of monks practicing non-violence and distributing the knowledge and the heavenly wisdom of Brahm Vidya all over. And my dear brothers and sisters, wherever there was in the greater India, till Bali Islands, Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, Myanmar, all over Indochina, that was the greater India, till Australia, and all over the Pacific Islands, where there was Hinduism. In November 2016, I was in Cambodia to see the Angkor Wat, the biggest Vishnu temple, which was built by the Hindu kings. And later on, how Buddhism came around and taught them the dharma of non-violence, the Buddhist teaching, the core message. So they got easily the shelter with the Hindu kings. But let me explain here how Chinese did it. From India, Madhu Vidya went to China. Of course, little stop somewhere in Cambodia, little stop in Japan, and little stop in Bali Islands and all over Pacific Islands, but it reached China. And how it reached China? At the time of King Harshvardhana of Thaneswar, a monk, a person with this great Sankalpa, Shiv Sankalpa, Wanshang, he came to India And he studied all the wisdom of Brahm Vidya in Nalanda University and all over India through all the Pandits, learned Pandits of Brahm Vidya. And he took all the books on himself. He was a carrier of the books. That's all he took back to China. And those books of Brahm Vidya became the books of diffusion of Brahm Vidya all over China, and the China was transformed into a divine nation. And through this attitude of diffusion of knowledge, they turn into a Madhu Vidya nation. The universal cooperation, so much so that they progress very quickly to the greatest heights. But then they were condemned again because of this curse. Because when they started separatism, when they started building the China wall all around, thinking that they don't want to share their prosperity with the neighbors, my dear brothers and sisters, they were condemned. Like the great scientist and the leader of scientific thought, Einstein said, the universe, if doesn't expand, if the universe doesn't expand, it will collapse on its own center. And that is what happens. If you don't grow, if you don't share Brahm Vidya, when China stopped sharing Brahm Vidya with the neighbors and building the walls of China, it collapsed on China itself. That's why the suicide of China. But in the meantime, let me tell you that they were so keen on the diffusion of the knowledge that they invented the stone press, printing the books. In India, it was always handwritten, copied from guru to chela, the guru to disciple. But in China, they printed books. That was the first invention of China for the diffusion of the knowledge, for the diffusion of the Brahm Vidya. And they became so great through the universal cooperation, through this great wisdom of Madhu Vidya, creating universal welfare for everybody and the greatest peace, progress and prosperity ecosystem they established in China. But when they started building the walls of Mexico, like what is happening to the United States of America today, they are trying to practice the exclusive righteousness, and they will be condemned with this collapse of the universe on themselves. And this is the greatest, darkest part for the history of the United States and the civilization of the United States and the culture of openness and the democratic values. My dear brothers and sisters, from China, this great Madhu Vidya went to Roman civilization. And the Roman civilization is again based on unity, on the Madhu Vidya. And then it went towards Europe, Britannia, to the Great Britain, and the whole of the Europe was transformed through the printing press and through the diffusion of knowledge. And then, let me tell you, the greatest modern development and the evolution of scientific thought is through diffusion of knowledge, seeding the brains. The scientific journals published all over the research centers are distributed. Of course, there is a business and commerce behind it. That now if you want to read an article of a research journal, you have to pay $50. Well, that's how they do their business. But through the diffusion of knowledge, through seeding the brains, and it is not something very new. We used to have these Kumbh Melas, where we used to distribute and diffuse the wisdom freely, even today. But my dear brothers and sisters, when the truth is lost, everything is lost. Because without the background and foundation of the truth and the Satya Dharma, everything becomes crooked. And it becomes crooked because if the parents are ignorant, and if the parents are not responsible, if the parents are overprotective, and the parents teach them their own children separatism, the children will turn into the devils. And they will behave whole life as the hand of devil. They will discriminate everybody on the basis of caste, color, creed, and nationality. My dear brothers and sisters, the Madhu Vidya is the divination of the whole humanity. This is the collective divination of all humanity through Brahm Vidya, through the application of Brahm Vidya. And if the Brahm Vidya is not applied for the universal welfare, it turns into a curse. So this is how Madhu Vidya disappeared from India, because the diffusion of knowledge was checked and the books were kept in the under lock and key, and there was no diffusion of the knowledge, and the whole of the India became illiterate. This is the truth of how Madhu Vidya was disappeared from India. Thank you very much and have a very, very beautiful day. And that's the message for today.